Hi everyone. So my name's Eleanor, and one day I would like to go into a bookshop and see a book that's shaped like a trumpet. And this idea came to me when I was at home in my bedroom scanning my bookshelf, and I quickly realized that most books are roughly the same height, the same length, and the same depth. So they stick out by the same amount on the shelf. That if all books had a white cover, books have become so standardized that they have become indistinguishable. Sorry, that's my arts and crafts in the maths room this morning. And I began to think why that was. The first reason is to do with hand size. So a book is taken to market with dimensions that are roughly equivalent to each other to suit our hand size. So novels that appeal to older demographics would be too fiddly for a toddler's hands, which is why toddlers' books are all larger books with hard covers and a large font. The second, this is not the original intention the author had. The author might not have wanted their novels to follow the established format, yet publishers get the final say. So today I'm going to be talking about how the author's intentions are overridden by the publishers in terms of length, design, and structure. So Arthur Miller's The Crucible is a play written in 1953 and has a section of photos from the original production also in 1953. And with that section of photos, the book amounts to 100 pages. Without them, 90. Miller wanted a play under 100 pages to communicate to the audience how quickly the characters' lives became impaired by the Salem witch trials. But the publishing company Puffin weren't keen on an idea of a book that short. They thought it seemed insignificant and far too brief to be memorable. So they added a section of photos in the middle. Though this didn't affect Miller's actual content, his original intention vanished under the weight of commercial interests. And even though successful authors do manage to hold authority over the formatting of their books, they are a minority, and not enough to budge the modicum of freedom that new writers get. So Victor Hugo's Les Miserables was written in 1862, but it was published into 5 volumes, which was a failure for Hugo, failing to convey the complete Bildungsroman and overcoming of criminal life for the protagonist Valjean, because the separate volumes made his journey seem broken, uncoupled, and disconnected. But obviously, with Les Miserables' success and popularity, it stands today as one of the longest novels ever to be published in one volume, around 1,500 pages. But the publisher's visions don't end with structure. Mary Shelley's Frankenstein was, for the 1800s, an exquisite novel with a black material cover and gold patterns. But all she really wanted was the novel on the right, a plain black cover with small handwriting there to evoke a foreboding, eerie atmosphere to all of society, serving as testament to the relationship between man and nature, that it should be a cautious one and we should be against experimenting with nature. But she is yet another author who gained her freedom after death because her design desire happened after her death. But what happens if the publishers were to make an error? The authors would be the ones who end up paying the price. So in the 1980s, Agatha Christie's novels faced their own mystery of diminishing sales. The publishing company Fontana decided to republish her novels, but they look like a horror story. You can see that they have copious amounts of skeletons, of weapons, of knives, and this doesn't suit the content of her stories. In Amazon, they are under a section called Family Murder Mysteries. And because of this, her estate ended up losing money. They never sold to the extent anticipated. This simply wasn't fair. But fame takes decades. If an author is famous now for writing a novel, that's a whole other thing for their success to sustain and to become a classic, and a whole other thing for the author themselves to become well-renowned. For authors to reach that column, they have to be renowned by people like critics, scholars, and the public. So for example, I'm sure you've all read the book One Day or seen the book One Day by David Nichols. Have you noticed that the preceding novels published by David Nichols follow the same design format? This is another marketing tool. Because if you've read or seen the book One Day and you see the other two books, Starter for 10 or The Understudy, by association, unless you don't like the book One Day, it will give you an incentive to buy the novel. But this doesn't make sense, because no two novels will evoke the same message twice, especially not two novels written by the same author who wants to branch out their readership to become successful. And this leads me on to solutions. So, what are we going to do about this? Well, there's one very obvious solution, and that's the internet. On websites like Wikipedia, you can draft an article any length, any font, any topic. This is clearly more liberating, but because anyone can do it, competition for work is much more fierce. And you have to give an incentive for people to read your work as opposed to an author whose book has been marketed to physically stand out. I'm not telling you to necessarily blame the publisher. I'm not telling you to write in your teens so that if you ever do become well-renowned, you'll be around to see your success. I'm not telling you to understand the publisher's dominant control in the marketing of a book. Rather, just to look around next time you're in a bookshop. See the variety, because it is there. This is a prevalent issue, and I would hope so, 'cause I spent 10 minutes talking about it. But book variety is getting better. It definitely is. And that's why, if I enter a bookshop now, or in the foreseeable future, I have faith that I will see a book shaped like a trumpet. Thank you.